going to be how you do word problems with trig problems. They have two special names. We have the angle of elevation. So that's if something is going up. So this angle I am looking up at, that would be my angle of elevation. Or we can have the angle of depression, which means I am looking down. So it's the angle that I will be looking down at. So we're going to look at a couple of these word problems together. Casey sights the top of an 84-foot tall lighthouse at an angle of elevation of 58 degrees. So this is the angle that Casey's chin is looking at. If Casey is 6 feet tall, how far is he standing from the base of the lighthouse? So this word base, anytime I mean it, means across the ground. That's going to be the bottom of my triangle. So we're going to go ahead and draw this out. We have Casey. And we know that Casey is 6 feet tall. We know that Casey is looking forward and sees a lighthouse. But he has to look up to see the top of the lighthouse. Right? So I'm looking up. So this is going to be the angle that I am looking at. And we know that we are looking at an angle of 58 degrees because that was what was told to us. So I'm looking up. We want to know how far he is standing away from this 84-foot tall lighthouse. So I want to know straight across because that's going to be what gives me a right angle. So first off, I need to know how much taller the lighthouse is than him. That would be this side of my triangle. So the very first thing I'm going to do is figure out that side of the triangle by subtracting how much taller the lighthouse is than Casey. Now I can figure out how far he's standing from the lighthouse, since that's what we were asked for, by using a trig function. So we're going to go through all the things that we've done before. We're going to label our hypotenuse, our adjacent, and our opposite. Then we're going to cross out the one that doesn't matter. So A goes with X, O goes with 78, H doesn't have anything. We're going to identify which one has O and A. Opposite and adjacent is tangent. So tangent of number of degrees is equal to the opposite on top of the adjacent. That's 78 over X. Now we're going to solve. So we've got to use cross multiplication. Put that over an imaginary 1. We get X tangent of 58 is equal to 78. Got to get X by itself, so we divide by tangent of 58. And this is what X is equal to. Let's go ahead and put that in the calculator. So we get 48.739. Let's go ahead and round that to 48.7. And we are measuring feet since it is a distance. So that is how far Casey is standing from the lighthouse. So once again, what I did is I started by drawing my problem out, and then I have to identify what the actual triangle is. So we found the side of the triangle that we were given the information for, and we came over here and solved it just like we did last week. Skip down and do number 4 next. I'm going to leave numbers 2 and 3 for you to do. A dog is standing 5 feet from the base of a tree, looking up at a cat who has climbed 16 feet up the tree. What's the angle of elevation from the point of the dog is standing on the ground to the cat? So I have a dog, and he is looking up a tree to see a cat. We know he's standing 5 feet away from the base of the tree. Just like I said last time, the word base means that's across the ground. So this is 5 feet. Trees go straight up and down, so that's going to be my right angle. And he is looking at the cat that's in the tree. And we know that that cat has climbed 16 feet up in the tree. Now what they're asking me is, what is the angle of elevation? So what is this angle that the dog is looking up at to see that cat? So we got to go through our steps and identify our trig function. So across the right angle is the hypotenuse, in between is the adjacent, and across from the angle is the opposite. Mark out what you don't need. We've got O and A, and you're going to get used to O and A for word problems because a lot of times you have tangent for word problems. There's not too many terrible things that use the hypotenuse when we're thinking real life. One of those things would be a slide though. So if I'm going down a slide, I'm going diagonally, right? So we've got opposite and adjacent. That tells me it's tangent. The angle always goes in the parentheses. Opposite on top of adjacent. I'm looking for the angle. That means that I'm going to be using my inverse. So I get x by itself. And do tangent inverse of the other side. Now all we have to do is put that in the calculator, and we're going to get our angle. So we have tangent inverse of 16 divided by 5. And we get that the dog is looking up at a 72.6 degree angle. Let's look at angle of depression now. So when looking down on an object, we get the angle of depression. It's formed by the observer's line of sight and a horizontal line. So that means if I'm looking straight forward and what I'm looking down at. So this is that angle. A lot of people get confused and try and do this angle, but that's not what my head tilted from. So my head, normally I look straight forward, but my head would tilt down to look down. So we're seeing how much you tilted your head, basically. The angle of depression and the angle of elevation will be congruent. That means equal. So this guy looking up would tilt his head the same amount up as this guy tilts his head down. And that's alternate interior angles. Usually we would have covered that before this. You have seen this in 8th grade, but you will see it again when you review that next year. A lifeguard is sitting on a platform looking down at a swimmer. And I do know this one is drawn, but I like to make sure we're practicing drawing. He's looking down at a swimmer. So here's my normal line of sight. Here's what I look down at. If the lifeguard's line of sight is 8 feet above the ground, And the angle of depression of the swimmer is 18 degrees. So how much did I tilt my head down? How far is the swimmer from the lifeguard? So it looks kind of confusing because I got a box there, but you have two options. We can say this is 8 feet, and we know in a rectangle the top and the bottom are same, so this is going to be X, and that's still a right angle. Or you could say, I know that this is 18 since those are the same angle, and we could solve it that way. What you should notice is that we have the same triangle twice, 8x and 18, 8x and 18. So you can use either of these two triangles. I'm going to use the one that is the angle depression triangle. A lot of times people like triangles that face this way better. Either way, you should be fine. Let's go ahead and get started. Hypotenuse is across from the right angle. 18 is the angle of depression, so I need to use it to find the opposite. And the one that's next to it is the adjacent. Identify which one we're not using. O has 8, A has X, H is gone. We need opposite and adjacent. Opposite and adjacent is tangent. So we're going to do tangent of 18, because that's the angle. It's equal to 8 on top of X. Put that imaginary 1 there so we can cross multiply. 8 times X is 8. X times tangent of 18 is written just like I said it. Divide by tangent 18 so that we can get X by itself. And then we'll put that in the calculator to get our answer. Eight divided by tangent of 18. That is 24.6 feet. We're going to do number 7 together, and then you guys are going to do 6 and 8 on this one. We have building A, which is 480 feet tall. Building B is 654 feet tall. If the angle of depression from the top of one building B, so if I'm looking forward, I'd be looking this way, angle of depression goes here. From the top of B to A is 42, so looking down is 42 degrees. How far apart are the buildings? So this is just like where I just mentioned we have to figure out what is the side of the triangle. So our triangle is actually this right here. Everything down here to do with the buildings doesn't really help me out, but what I can do is figure out how long this side is, because it's just how much taller B is than A. So we're just going to do 654 minus 480. So this side is 174, because this is 174 feet taller than that one. Now they're asking me how far apart they are. How far apart is always flat. If I ask you how far apart from somebody you are, you're not going to measure from their head to yours to see like the difference in heights and how far away you're standing. You're just going to see how far apart you are horizontally. So we want to know this side. Now you are always more than welcome to pull the triangle out and redraw it. I think that with as small as this is one of those places where that is nice to do. So I'm going to redraw that to the side. We know this is the right angle. We know this is 174. The angle of depression is 42, and the side is X. Now we're just doing a normal trig problem. So we've got to label, decide which one we're not using, identify what to use. We've got opposite and adjacent again. Like I said, most word problems are going to be tangent. Angle goes in the parentheses. We've got opposite over adjacent. Now we're going to do cross multiplication to solve. And you've probably noticed that these get pretty repetitive. They just have, here's an extra step. You've learned how to do this. Now add this. Let's get x by itself. So I'm going to plug that in the calculator. 174 over tangent of 42. Oh. So that is 193.2 feet. So they're 193.2 feet apart. So those are 4 examples of word problems for trig. Angle of elevation is if I'm looking up. Angle of depression is if I'm looking down. I'm going to upload these problems into a Word doc so that you can do them there. And I will name them 2, 3, 6, and 8 for you, so they are exactly the same as this sheet.